All right, everybody, welcome back to inventRightTV. And today we've got something really special for you. We're going to help you become more successful at coming up with ideas. So you need to watch this video. But I have an expert here that knows all about giving you the tools to help you be the best creative person you can possibly be. Bob, thank you for coming on inventRightTV. How are you?
I am fantastic, Stephen, and it's really good to be here with you today.
Okay, Bob, you and I know that when you ask a creative person, let me teach you some tools about being creative. They kind of go, I already know how to be. I'm creative. I know how to be creative. But you and I both know that if you want to make a living being creative, you need to have some skills. In fact, you need to practice. You need a muscle. It's to really be good at this. You got to keep practicing, and you need tools, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, listen, one of the most dangerous things I think people can say is, I already know that. Because when I had a mentor of mine many years ago, Stephen, that said, it's what you learn after you know it all that makes all the difference.
Okay. Well, I hear all the time, look, I'm creative. I've always been creative. No, I don't need any extra tools. Like, so, okay. I also know that if you're in the business of getting paid for your creativity, you better be pretty good at it, right? So let's talk about something you wrote that I saw on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for pointing that out this week. That I thought was brilliant. All right, let's talk about that because you talked about coming up with kind of like crazy ideas, bad ideas that lead to good ideas.
Right? Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when we do corporate training, we train these folks how to be more creative and innovative using a number of different, what I call scientific approaches to creativity. And one of those is come up with bad or ridiculous ideas. And of all the different methodologies that we use, that is probably the most popular one that people have the absolute most fun with.
Why is that?
Well, I think the primary reason is there's really no pressure. You're not, when you're aiming to come up with bad ideas, it's like, hey, we're supposed to come up with stuff that sucks, right? So it's like, hey, let's just have fun with this, and it's but the magic in it is, I think, is that the same sort of processes that your brain has to go through to consider new possibilities are present in coming up with bad ideas just as much as they are trying to come up with good ideas.
But you know what I love about that? I love all my ideas. I even like the bad ones just as much as the good ones. Now, I like the ones that actually produce revenue too. Don't get me wrong, but the bad ideas really put a smile on my face. But what I've realized, because you have that freedom to just be a child and giggle and laugh, and it seems like it opens it up. It opens up that channel for other things to pop in because there's no boundaries, there's no restrictions, there's no hey that's a bad idea. So it just completely opens it up that hey I can have fun, and that's when things start to happen.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about that is I have found that in any sort of sizable set of bad ideas, what you think on the surface are bad ideas, there's almost always one or two out of 10 that are when you might have to tweak them a little bit, you might have to polish
Okay.
them up, but they can actually be absolute gems.
Yeah, this when you wrote that, it just resonated with me because when I first started out, I had this big sketch pad, and it wasn't like some important paper. It was just newsprint, right? Nothing about it was important, and I just had just markers, and I would just come up with ideas and throw them out there and write them. But there was this freedom of it that that allowed me to just be anything I wanted to be and silly and goofy. But every once in a while, something brilliant popped. And that's the way I did it, was to open myself up, come up with bad ideas, but every once in a while something, and you don't know when, you're not planning on it, you have all this freedom, but this thing just jumps out and you go, oh, that might be something I want to continue to develop.
And let me interject a comment here. Creative people have a tendency to think, well, I'm just creative. I can come up with ideas all the time, right? But what I have found is that when you start taking these scientific approaches and you utilize those regularly, systematically, those aha moments, which a lot of times are elusive, they'll pop more often because your subconscious brain is actually working on trying to improve the ideas that you came up with. So, and I have a key question when we're doing corporate training using this. Typically, we're trying to come up with ideas for to help a business grow. And so when we're doing this corporate training, what we'll do is we'll take and we'll look at those bad ideas and we'll ask a key crucial question. And that is, in what
Oh,
ways might we tweak this and make it a good idea?
I like that. So let's talk a little bit about you, because you said something that was really interesting to me. We're going to learn how to be creative from a scientific approach. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. How does that make sense? From a creative to a scientific, how does that blend?
Well, listen, there's more art to science than you might think. And what you've got to understand, I think for people to really understand how human beings work, then you understand that you really do need a scientific approach because people are
Okay.
motivated to action through three things. It's psychology, sociology, and biology. And and the problem that human beings get into when they're trying to think creatively, and this is true whether you think you're creative or not, is that biologically you are wired to, if you have solved a problem sometime in the past, the way to solve that problem has been moved to your subconscious brain because
Hmm.
conscious thought burns calories and biologically we're wired to survive. And so the more we can do physiologically to avoid burning calories, we'll do that. And that's why we move all these different
Okay.
processes to our subconscious automatic pilot.
Okay. Bob, you've got a tough group that you teach to be creative, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about teaching the, in a corporate world. That's not my world. How do you approach it? Talk a little bit about what you do and how do you help those people be creative? Give you a
Well,
platform on
yeah. So, one, I invented a creative thinking game. And I think that's one of the key factors in teaching is when something feels like work, people have a tendency to avoid it, right?
it. All right.
I mean, nobody does accounting on the weekends for fun, or very few people do. But when something feels like fun, like playing a game, people want to do more
Okay.
of that. And so what we've done is we've taken the scientific methodologies that we teach with, and we've put them into a friendly competitive game format. And
Okay.
when you do it that way, and people know, hey, there's really no pressure here. I mean, I remember I had a client of mine, Stephen, told me, came up to me after one of our sessions, and he said, one of the greatest things about this game is, Bob, when you win, and when you lose, you still win because you're still coming up with some ideas you might be able to move
Okay.
forward with.
So is this a game for corporate people to get them to be more creative in their businesses to help them do a better job?
It could be. I mean, like I said, we use it in our training seminars.
Okay.
I know some creative people that are inventors that have
I mean, can I go on Amazon and buy that game right
you
now or
can't go
not?
on
Why
Amazon.
not?
No, you can't. Well, you should be
Why
able to,
not?
shouldn't you? Right. But, I view it more as kind of a niche game, as
Okay.
opposed to a mass market game. Although we have played it as a family, for fun purposes. So,
I,
um,
I think you need to rethink this a little bit. Bob,
Maybe.
because you know, I could see this going in a whole nother direction. I do believe everyone that you're listening to us talk about being creative, if you're in the world of making money and you want to do the things you love, be creative, and get paid for it, you need to really exercise that muscle of creativity. You need to be able to call upon that creativity at any given moment. You should not wait for inspiration to strike. If you're waiting for that to happen, there's most likely you won't be in this world of being creative very long. Okay, so you need these tools, you need these games, you need this type of information. Talk about you write a lot about what are you doing on LinkedIn that everybody you've got a platform on LinkedIn. How do people find you? First of all, how do people find you? Because you've got a great audience on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. One, they can just go to my profile, which is linkedin.com/in/Bob Sager, Bobsager.
We'll
Um,
put all that down below.
yeah,
Okay.
great. But the other thing that I would suggest people do is I publish a newsletter almost every Tuesday, and that's called
Okay.
Freaking Brilliant Ideas Newsletter.
All right.
And so those are probably the two best ways to follow along with my content. And
Okay.
obviously they can hit the follow button on my profile and see what I post daily as well.
You've got a big audience over there. They're loving you over there. You guys, Bob knows what he's talking about here because on LinkedIn, everybody's commenting, they're following him. If you want to be more creative and you think it's important for you, follow Bob. That's the advice I'm going to give you. Is that a good advice? Is
I,
that
but how can I disagree with that, Stephen?
all right? Okay, everybody. Thank you for coming on inventRight TV. We'll see you next time, Bob. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure
And
being with you.
please,
Yeah.
please follow Bob on LinkedIn. Sign up with his newsletter, learn all about being more creative. This is Stephen Key. I will see you next time. Okay, you've got a great product idea and you're not quite sure what to do. Or maybe you've got inventory in your garage because you were selling your product on Amazon and you don't want to continue doing it, but you want someone to help you license your idea to a company to bring it to market for you. We have a new program that's called Gateway, where we do all the work for you. We'll find the right companies and the right people to make sure your product is pitched correctly to get the licensing deal. This new program is called Gateway. If you're interested, please check it out.